The Bell legal dispute just jumped to a whole different level, and things are moving fast. Everything took a sharp turn when the Times dropped the full resignation letter from the charity's trustees, a document nobody had seen before. This wasn't just some minor update. This was a detailed message written before the trustees stepped down.
It's going to be a worldwide sensation, and it's going to open up all sorts of racist issues and racial attitudes. And Harry and Meghan are going to come out of it stinking. They're not going to come out of it smelling like roses. They're going to come out of it like the race baiters which they are. And Meghan is going to come out as exactly what she is.
And it instantly pulled everyone deeper into the situation. According to that letter, the trustees said they all chose to step away together after raising serious concerns about Chandauka's behavior. They described a complete breakdown in communication across the entire organization, not just between trustees, but also involving staff and even key funders. And it didn't stop there. They also claimed there were attempts to influence official board records, which immediately raised serious questions and added even more pressure to an already tense situation. But it didn't end with internal conflict. The trustees also said that as calls for her resignation started getting louder, Chandauka responded with unclear but troubling claims that they felt were meant to apply pressure. They described it as a situation where the board, supporters, and even a donor felt pushed into a corner. At that point, they made it clear that things had gone too far, warning that the charity itself could face long-term damage if nothing changed. Now here's where things really start to stand out. That letter didn't just randomly appear in the media. Reports suggest it was shared with the Times by sources linked to Harry's side of the situation, and that detail has people talking non-stop. For many watching closely, this doesn't look accidental at all. It looks calculated and very deliberate. People who follow legal and media disputes picked up on this immediately.
Times newspaper, an unseen resignation letter where the trustees of Centre Bali accused the chair Sophie Chandauka of misconduct and intimidation. They have now made this letter public.
When things get complicated behind the scenes, attention often shifts to shaping how the story is seen publicly. And that's exactly how some are reading this move, as an attempt to frame Chandauka as the central issue, while presenting Harry as someone trying to steady the situation and protect the organization. Timing is everything in situations like this, and this timing is raising eyebrows. The letter came out right as Chandauka's lawsuit was already gaining serious traction, which makes it feel far from coincidence. Instead of a simple release, many are seeing this as a carefully timed move meant to influence how the public views everything. From a legal standpoint, this kind of move carries real weight. Sharing internal documents during an active dispute isn't just about headlines. It can shape opinions while the case is still unfolding. And once public perceptions start shifting, it can change how everything is interpreted moving forward. And there's another layer that makes this even more intense. The document includes strong claims that are still being challenged, while at the same time, Chandauka's lawsuit argues there was a coordinated effort to shape media coverage around her. Now, those claims sit right next to this latest development.
And it's very likely that Harry is going to lose that. How many lawsuits can Harry afford that he basically loses? Because let's remember, Meghan's lawsuit against Associated on the privacy grounds, she was awarded £1 damages.
And that overlap is making the whole situation feel even more complicated. It gets even more tricky when you look at how this could be interpreted. If the letter was released during an ongoing dispute, some could argue it connects directly to the very concerns being raised in the lawsuit. That creates a serious contradiction, because trying to influence public opinion while a reputational case is active can raise major legal questions. And that's something both sides are definitely watching closely. Lady Colin Campbell has also stepped in with a strong opinion based on years of experience with high-profile situations. She believes Shan's case has a solid foundation and that just filing the lawsuit has already shifted the dynamic. But at the same time, there's a real chance this could go all the way to court. And if that happens, things could escalate even further. The biggest issue right now is that neither side seems ready to back down. Harry is unlikely to make any kind of statement that could be seen as accepting fault, while Chandauka is expected to stand firm unless her claims are clearly acknowledged. When both sides hold their ground like that,
And she knows that there is a layering in the Black community, and that fair-skinned negresses, as they used to be called, often look down upon darker-skinned women of color.
It usually leads straight into a full legal showdown. Now add financial pressure into the situation, and it becomes even heavier. Harry is already dealing with other legal challenges involving major media organizations, and those outcomes are expected to be difficult. That means he could be facing major costs on multiple fronts at the same time, which puts both financial and public pressure right on him. There's also the reputation factor, and that part is getting harder to manage. It becomes complicated to maintain the image of being treated unfairly while also facing claims from someone saying they experienced unfair treatment too. That overlap creates a clash in narratives that more people are starting to notice. Another angle that's gaining attention is how personal experiences can shape how situations are understood. Campbell pointed out that background and past experiences can influence how certain actions are interpreted, especially when it comes to long-standing social dynamics. From that perspective, Chandauka may have seen certain decisions and interactions through a very specific lens shaped by her own experiences. This includes claims about being overlooked, pushed aside in professional spaces.
Meghan is the superior fair-skinned woman of color, and Sophie Chandauka should know her place. And of course, it's not worked out like that, because Sophie Chandauka knows the law, and Sophie Chandauka knows that she can clobber them. And this is not only about Harry, this is about Meghan as well.
And excluded in ways that go beyond simple disagreements. These are serious points, and if they are supported with clear examples, they could become a major part of the case moving forward. Yet, Chandauka has described her experience using a term that highlights combined bias related to both race and gender. If that argument is supported with strong evidence, it could have a major impact on how the situation is viewed, both in legal terms and in the public eye, especially considering the public image of those involved has often been connected to speaking out against unfair treatment. That's what makes this situation feel so intense right now. If these claims end up being supported, it could completely flip the narrative in a way that's hard to recover from. The same arguments that were once used to defend against criticism could suddenly be turned around, and that kind of shift would be impossible to ignore. Campbell's perspective comes across as calculated and confident. She believes Chandauka is in a strong position to present her case and is fully prepared to push it forward. Whether that argument holds up in court is still unknown, but the strategy behind it is clear, and people are watching closely to see how it all plays out. And just when it seemed like things couldn't get more complicated, another issue stepped into the spotlight. The legal process involving Harry's visa documentation has now hit a delay after officials missed an important deadline.
And basically, if this case goes to court, I should say to trial, because, there are many little proceedings before trial. If this case goes to trial, I think it's going to be a worldwide sensation, and it's going to open up all sorts of racist issues and racial attitudes.
That delay has pushed the next update further back, and naturally, it's raised even more curiosity. What really stands out here is the sheer size of the documentation involved. Reports to sheer to 37 separate records, adding up to nearly 2,500 pages, which is far from what anyone would expect from a routine case. That kind of volume suggests there was a lot happening behind the scenes, with multiple officials involved and detailed internal discussions taking place. And of course, that leads to even more questions. Why would something that's usually straightforward generate that much paperwork? That's exactly what people are trying to figure out right now, and it's another reason this situation keeps pulling attention. The scale alone is raising eyebrows. When you're dealing with thousands of pages tied to a single application, it signals that this wasn't handled like a normal case. It points toward deeper review, multiple layers of consideration, and a process that went far beyond the usual steps. There's also a clear reason why this is getting so much attention. Harry previously shared in his book that he had past experiences involving substances like cocaine, marijuana, and psychedelic mushrooms. Under U.S. rules, applicants are expected to disclose that kind of history, regardless of how laws may vary in different places. And that brings up a major question.
Harry and Meghan being wired during these trips back to the UK in the past for major royal events, including that was for the late Queen's funeral, but also for her Platinum Jubilee celebrations, and also when Harry returned to the coronation, where Meghan didn't come.
Did what was shared publicly match what was included in official documentation? That's the key issue being looked at. If there's any difference between those details, it could raise concerns about accuracy, and that's something authorities take very seriously. At the same time, the situation is unfolding in a complicated environment. Immigration matters can be handled more strictly during certain periods, especially when the case draws public attention. It's not fully clear how much extra scrutiny this case is receiving, but the level of documentation suggests it's being handled with serious care behind the scenes. What is confirmed is that there's an active legal process already in motion. The Heritage Foundation is pushing for more transparency through official channels, and the State Department has acknowledged a large set of records connected to the case. The review has now been delayed, which only adds more curiosity about what could eventually come out. The timing of that delay is also catching attention. The next update has been pushed until after a major state visit, and while there's no official link, people have definitely noticed how those timelines line up. It gives the impression that everything is being handled very carefully during a sensitive moment. That visit itself is being managed with a lot of control. There are clear signs that both sides want to avoid unnecessary complications and keep everything stable. Even small details, like limiting certain public appearances, show how carefully things are being handled right now.
Who she couldn't trust. And, once it became known that Meghan was busy taping things, that Meghan was basically an adversary, she understood that she had to treat Meghan as a consistent adversary. It wasn't only about Netflix.
King Charles is in a position that requires serious balance. He's expected to represent stability while staying above political tension, but at the same time, he's dealing with relationships that are clearly under pressure. That's not an easy role to manage, especially during a time filled with global challenges. And there's another factor adding weight to all of this. Reports suggest he's been maintaining a demanding schedule while also dealing with personal health challenges. That only makes the situation feel more intense, because it shows the level of responsibility being carried despite everything happening behind the scenes. Then there's another claim that has been circulating for years, but is now getting attention again. According to individuals familiar with royal circles, there were concerns that private conversations could potentially be recorded and later used publicly. That kind of concern doesn't come lightly, especially from someone experienced in handling sensitive matters. What makes this even more interesting is how that concern may have shaped behavior. There are claims that certain meetings were handled more cautiously, with additional people present and limits placed on private discussions. That suggests a level of awareness and control based on perceived risk rather than coincidence. When you step back and look at everything, there's a clear pattern connecting these situations. It all comes down to how private information is handled and whether it stays behind closed doors or becomes part of a larger public narrative. That same theme shows up in the legal dispute as well, where internal matters are now becoming part of a much bigger conversation. Even past events are now being looked at in a completely different way. Meetings that once seemed normal are being revisited with fresh eyes. And people are starting to wonder if certain precautions were taken for a specific reason. That shift in perspective is changing how earlier moments are understood, and it's making everything feel a lot more layered. When you step back and look at the full picture, it becomes much bigger than just one issue. There's the active lawsuit, the visa review process, renewed focus on past concerns, and constant public discussion all happening at the same time. Each piece stands on its own, but together they create a situation that's getting harder to manage through messaging alone. What makes this moment stand out even more?
It wasn't just necessarily for Netflix purposes. I mean, of course, that was one aspect of it, but it actually could have been something much more sinister.
Is that these processes are controlled by institutions, not public opinion. The outcomes won't be decided by headlines or online reactions. They'll come down to records, documents, and official findings. And with several of these developments expected to unfold around the same time, the spotlight is only getting stronger. Even the earlier release of the resignation letter now feels different when viewed in this context. Internal documents don't usually become public without a clear reason, and the timing of that release makes it feel intentional rather than random. That's why people are paying close attention not just to what is shared, but exactly when it appears. At this stage, everything feels connected. Legal pressure, growing public attention, carefully timed disclosures, all of it is building into one larger situation that keeps evolving. And with every new update, the gap between controlled messaging and verified records is becoming more noticeable. That single decision to release the letter now carries much more weight than it first seemed. It's no longer just about a document becoming public, it's being seen as part of a wider pattern. And that lines up directly with what Chandauka's case is focused on, claims that damaging information was shared in a way that could affect how she's viewed. From a legal point of view, moments like this don't just fade away, they get recorded and analyzed. Legal teams will be watching everything closely, from the timing of the release to the platform it appeared on, and any follow-up coverage that connects to it. Each detail becomes part of a bigger timeline, and that timeline can turn into key evidence if it shows a consistent pattern. Now here's where things take an unexpected turn. A move that may have been meant to shape public opinion could actually end up strengthening the other side's argument. That's the twist in situations like this, because when there are claims about coordinated messaging, every new public move can be interpreted as part of that same pattern. If this case continues and internal communications are reviewed,
Late Queen was very sensible, very good judgment, very cautious, but also within all of that, very adventurous.
everything will be compared side by side. The timing of the letter, how it was presented, and any links to private discussions could all be examined together. That's when patterns become clearer, and that's when the situation can shift quickly. There's also a major financial angle that raises the stakes even higher. Legal systems include rules where rejecting a reasonable settlement offer can have serious consequences if the final outcome isn't more favorable. That means early decisions in the process can end up costing a lot later on. This isn't just a possibility. It's happened before in similar cases. Even a symbolic result in court can lead to major financial responsibility if legal costs swing in the opposite direction. That's why experts are highlighting this risk, because the same outcome could happen again under the right conditions. Now add multiple legal challenges happening at once, and the pressure builds fast. One case could be heading toward a difficult outcome, another requires active defense, and a third is raising questions that could impact public perception. Each one is serious on its own, but together they create a much heavier situation. And the pressure isn't just legal, it's financial too. Maintaining a high-profile lifestyle, covering legal expenses, and managing public-facing projects all require consistent income. But there are reports suggesting that some earlier major deals have slowed down, while newer ventures haven't reached the same level yet. That's why recent appearances are being viewed differently. Events, speaking engagements, and brand-related activities are now seen not just as visibility moves, but also as ways to maintain income during a period of rising costs. It changes how people interpret those appearances, especially when they happen alongside ongoing legal matters. At the same time, there's a clear contrast playing out on a global level. While one side is managing legal and financial pressure, King Charles is carrying out official duties that don't involve commercial activity. His recent state visit highlights a more traditional role focused on representation, relationships, and responsibility, even under personal challenges. That contrast is what many observers are focusing on right now. One side operating within established institutional roles, the other navigating independent paths that sometimes appear visually similar. And when those lines start to blur from the outside, it raises questions about clarity and perception, because perception plays a huge role here. If people can't clearly separate official duties from private activities, it can affect how both are viewed. That's why these distinctions matter so much, and why they're being talked about more openly now. Even earlier precautions are now being looked at through this lens. Reports suggest that certain interactions were handled with extra care, including having others present and limiting private conversations. That level of caution points to concerns that may have gone beyond routine protocol and were based on specific considerations. And now, with everything unfolding at the same time, the connections are becoming clearer. Legal actions, public narratives, financial pressure, and institutional responsibilities are all intersecting in real time. Each new development adds another layer, and each layer makes the situation feel even more intense. What's clear is that this is no longer about just one issue or one moment. It's a mix of legal strategy, public perception, and long-term impact all playing out together. And as more information continues to surface, The difference between carefully shaped messaging and documented facts is becoming harder and harder to manage. She saw it coming, and she saw it early. With decades of experience and sharp instincts, she understood exactly what kind of situation this was turning into. To her, this wasn't just a complicated moment. It was something deeper, a direct clash where the stability of the institution itself could be put at risk. She recognized the risk in trying to balance official responsibilities with personal ventures, and she raised concerns long before it became obvious to everyone else. The idea of being half in, half out was never going to last, and she knew it from the start. Mixing public duty with commercial interests was always going to create pressure, and now that pressure is unfolding right in front of everyone. What makes this even more striking is how her concerns are now being reflected in real-time developments. One by one, events are lining up with what she had already pointed out. Legal processes, growing public attention, and ongoing reviews are all building a record that continues to strengthen as time goes on. Even though she's not here to see it all unfold, her judgment is being echoed through everything happening now. Decisions made years ago are being looked at again, and the confidence behind those choices is now being questioned more than ever. The Sandringham Summit stands out as a major turning point, and looking back, it feels even more significant today. Two individuals believed they could take a different path, reshape the system, and make it work on their terms. But what's unfolding now suggests that replacing decades of experience and understanding isn't something that can be done easily, and now everything is starting to catch up. Pressure is building, timelines are starting to align, and the gap between carefully shaped narratives and documented facts is getting smaller and smaller. The moment where everything becomes clear feels closer than ever. Another factor adding weight to all of this is the level of insight behind recent reports. When information comes from individuals with close knowledge of the inner circle, it carries a different level of credibility. This isn't just surface-level talk, it's based on real interactions and first-hand awareness. The precautions reportedly taken during that time also stand out in a big way. Having additional people present during conversations, limiting one-on-one discussions, these aren't random choices. They reflect a level of caution that suggests something serious was being considered behind closed doors. And when separate sources begin describing the same patterns, it becomes much harder to dismiss. That kind of consistency strengthens the overall picture and moves it away from speculation into something that feels much more grounded. At the center of it all is one key issue: trust. When concerns reach a point where even private conversations are handled with extra safeguards, everything changes. It's no longer just about disagreements, it becomes about protecting the foundation of the institution itself. At the same time, the global stage is adding another layer to everything unfolding. While these developments continue, major diplomatic efforts are happening in parallel. King Charles is stepping into a role that demands focus, balance, and responsibility, representing long-standing traditions under real pressure. That's where the contrast becomes impossible to ignore. On one side, there are official duties carried out with no commercial angle, focused entirely on public responsibility. On the other side, there are activities that may look similar on the surface, but operate under completely different intentions. And that difference matters more than ever right now, because when those two worlds start to appear similar from the outside, it creates confusion about what's official and what's independent. That's exactly the kind of situation the institution has always tried to avoid. Everything is unfolding at once, and the momentum is building fast. Legal developments, public conversations, financial pressure, and institutional responsibilities are all colliding in real time. Each new detail adds another layer to a situation that's becoming harder to manage. The summer is getting closer, and the timing is intense. Multiple outcomes, multiple decisions, all expected to land within the same period. And when they do, the full picture could become much clearer very quickly. So now it's your turn. What do you think about everything happening here? Is this all just a coincidence? Or do you think those early warnings are turning out to be more accurate than people expected? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit that like button, make sure you subscribe, share this with someone following the story, and I'll see you on the next one.